Truckers of Reddit, have you ever gotten spooked or creeped out while parking overnight somewhere? Have a trucker story from the extended family. An uncle used to drive a lot, and he always came back with the most weirdest stories ever. While every family member knew his stories, there was one story he told and warned about. Even to me, when I was 6 or so. Moral of the story is to never stay during night in the desert alone. It seems, once he drove to Chile, he had a contract and the way there was okay. I made the travel myself later in life, it's beautiful. Whenever he was done he usually spent a few bucks on booze, but this time due to a family gathering he wanted to come back as soon as possible. So instead of drinking in some bar, he decided to sleep a bit at the Atacama Desert. Well, it's a desert, and he had parked way outside the road and a few miles before the next village. He sleeps and wakes up on someone singing. He is confused and thinks it's the radio, but the radio is not on. Then the singing stops and it sounds more like a scream of help. That's when he wants to get out and help, but still he is confused. He said he started the motor and the lights to see where and who was there. He also did open the window a bit and yelled asking what happened. It was nothing, and right then, when he decides to get out anyway, he catches a movement in the corner of where the lights end. It looked like a woman, but the face was pitch dark. He freaks out and drives away, non-stop until he reached home. Whatever he saw, or thought he saw, every time he told the story his face went pale. Even my grandmother commented how he was usually a very jolly guy, but whatever happened in the Atacama Desert freaked him totally out. I used to haul salt water off of well sites in Oklahoma on the night shift. I was standing at the rear of my trailer as I was loading out in BFE somewhere when I heard gravel crunching like someone was walking towards me. Got that feeling where you feel you're being watched. Stepped around the trailer towards the sound and shined my flashlight at a cow licking the side of my trailer. Pulled over for a break on the way to Melbourne from Sydney at a truck stop. No street lights or anything, pitch black. No other trucks or cars at the stop. I turn off my lights. I switch the truck off, do the curtains, lock the truck from both sides, jump into bed. Set my alarm and set my phone above me in the compartment. I was rolling over from side to side for around 5-10 minutes. I couldn't get to sleep due to it being prime summer temperatures, reaching around 30 degrees at night. I'm looking up at the ceiling mentally planning out the day ahead. Suddenly the passenger side door opens up slightly, cabin light turns on. What the fuck? Now, the truck is fairly a late model and in pristine condition, so there's no question about door being faulty or anything. I just sat there for what felt like eternity expecting someone to come up and see me sitting there with the solid rod in my hand that we use for tightening belts. No one came up. Nor was there any noise at all. Just quiet eerie silence. I grabbed my torch and jumped down, walked around the truck. No other trucks were around, nor were there any cars. It was just me and my fully loaded B-double. After around 5-10 minutes of getting fucked around with, I locked up and went to bed again. Woke up next morning, yawned, fixed myself up along with the bed. Opened the curtains, and FML there's a cemetery next to the stop where I parked. Hunger and laziness all escaped upon realization. Grabbed keys, fuck putting shoes on, fuck putting pants on, switched truck on and just got the fuck out of there ASAP. I'm trucker, based in Canada. Was crossing border through Detroit, got pulled in for inspection. Flashing police lights, megaphone instructions, police escort. Had a load of tubes. I pictured pipes of some kind. Turns out it was a load of old cathode ray picture tubes for recycling. They give off faint radiation and trip the sensors. Spent 4 hours in a cinder block room without my phone or passport. Finally released, almost out of hours of service. Pulled into the first truck stop I could find. They told me they charge $10 to park there. This is almost unheard of. Most truck stops want you there because you're going to spend money. They explained it was because it was a gated yard with a security guard watching your ass overnight against the rampant crime in the area. Detroit. Also rolled past Gary, Indiana, which is infamous for murdering truck drivers. Glad to be Canada only now. Back when my dad was a truck driver, he stopped to sleep in a lot one night. The guy he leased his truck from happened to see him parked there, and in the morning, when my dad went to the restroom, this guy used a spare key and hid in the sleeper. Once my dad was on starting to leave, the guy reached out and grabbed him. My dad said he freaked out, so he just bailed out of the truck. It was moving around 5 miles per hour. My boyfriend is a truck driver who routinely does midnight runs. Oddly enough, I asked him this question myself a few days ago. He told me that one night he getting ready to park in a lot next to a truck stop. He said it looked like there was no lights, no cars, no sign of anyone, but he said screw it, he was tired. He woke up the next morning parked on the side of the road with 3 highway patrol vehicles behind him. He was about 15 miles away from the truck stop he parked at. Thing is, he was sleeping in his camper the whole night. He has no idea how he got on the side of the road, and logic says someone tried stealing the truck and succeeded. And the police convinced him of this happening as they saw a man in a black jumpsuit running away from his truck into a nearby field. Even then, he still feels uneasy about the whole situation. Apparently the doors were still locked from the inside and there was no real sign of anyone trying to break in. Wow, I actually have a relevant story. I'm not a trucker, but I was headed from Salt Lake City, Utah to Albuquerque, New Mexico late on a Friday evening. When I got to southern Utah and near the Arizona border, I had gotten tired enough to need to pull over and sleep. I took a county road off of some highway exit and was driving down it to pull off so that I could sleep without flights interrupting me or getting woken up by a state trooper and being asked to move along. That can be pretty annoying, and as a person who sleeps in his car a fair amount on road trips, to get a few hours before pushing on again, it's just uncomfortable to be woken up. Anyway, the following happened as I'm driving along this county road a few miles away from the highway at about 3 in the morning, and suddenly lights come on right behind me with a vehicle that is very close on my ass. It's a large Dodge truck with a light bar and 4 or 5 hella lights that are shining into my rear view, blinding me. I try to pull over so that they can get around, heart beating and very scared. They pull over behind me. So I take off and try to lose them. But I'm in a shitty older Saturn sedan, and they are in a pickup truck with 4-wheel drive on a road they are familiar with. It becomes clear that I'm not going to be able to lose them. They are swerving behind me, they are trying to pull up beside me, and they are flicking their lights. This was a very scary experience. I thought it through and had no idea what road I pulled off of, so calling 911 wouldn't have helped me since I couldn't tell them where to show up to help me. Regardless, this emergency was happening now, and I needed to deal with it. It was a fight or flight situation, and my flight was not working, so I decided to fight. I always travel with a small weapon of some kind, and what I had between my driver's side door and my seat was a very large hunting knife, so I pulled my e-brake suddenly and slammed to a stop. As soon as my car stopped moving, I got out and started running at the truck, terrified but yelling like I was just fucking insane and ready for battle. They were sliding to a stop behind me and actually almost hit my Saturn by the time that I was almost at their truck. They had thrown it in reverse and were backing up. I could see inside of their truck, and it looked like some teenagers on the bench seat. The look of fright on their faces made me more emboldened, and I roared and yelled and cussed as they spun around and took off. It occurred to me after that, while calming down from a really fucking terrifying experience, that they were just kids out having some fun on a weekend night in a rural area. But to me it really felt like I was being attacked, and maybe they were going to try to kill me. I still think back on it with a lot of fear, because it was just a helpless situation, and my only reaction that seemed appropriate was to try to at least hurt them before they killed me. So somewhere out there now 10 years later are a group of young adults in their mid-20s to late 20s who have a crazy story about some redneck who turned the tables on them and charged them with a knife while they were just having a little fun. I was driving overnight in a very low populated area. Due to circumstances, I was seriously sleep deprived. Driving in a poorly lit stretch of woods, my headlights started to cast shadows through the rails on the side of the road and started playing on the trees on either side. It looked and felt like I was driving across an ocean. And then the hallucinations started. When you are seriously sleep deprived, you'll start to see shadows flicking across the edges of your field of vision. Shadowy figures started appearing in the water next to the road, swimming alongside me. They looked like monstrous mermaids, jumping in and out of the water. The Dutch roads are notorious for having very few truck stops that actually had space for a real truck. So I drove for another hour taunted by these figures. First truck stop I pull into and ready myself for a nap. I wake up a couple of hours later, and one of the figures was in the cab with me, looking at me. I freeze, terrified for my life. I couldn't move until I calmed down enough to start noticing that, while it seems to be moving and breathing, it doesn't seem to move that much. And then I realized it was my coat, slung across the seat. Panic subsided and I used the adrenaline rush to drive the 2 more hours I had to go. Not a trucker, but I drive a lot of miles in a company truck for my oil field company. I'm on call 24/7, so I'm out at all hours. One night after a long day on a location in the Oklahoma Panhandle, which is rather remote and sparsely populated, I was driving back to the town where my shop is located. I got too sleepy to drive and decided to pull over and nap until the sun came up. So, I pulled off of the 2-lane highway down a county road and parked on the side of that road. It's safer than pulling off on the shoulder of the highway and no headlights to bother you. This was / common practice for me. I left my pickup running and turned the headlights off and leaned my seat back and fell asleep pretty quick with the account on low and the radio turned off. I slept pretty good for maybe an hour, and then I guess I was having strange dreams, so I woke up but just kept laying there because I was groggy. The wind was picking up and sort of shaking the truck with random strong gusts. Lots of wind in Oklahoma. Eventually, I started to imagine I was hearing whispering or murmurs, but I attributed it to the wind and my sleepy state or maybe the radio being still on but low volume. I kept hearing it, so I sat up and turned the headlights back on to look around. The lights illuminated the dirt road to my side and in front of me. About 50 feet in front of my truck, and extending down the road into the dark where my headlights faded out were maybe 20 coyotes all milling around and sniffling around in the gravel of the road. Their eyes reflecting in the lights. Coyotes usually run from light and avoid humans and their noise at all cost. There was no fear in these coyotes, and I was sort of struck by how many there were all standing in the road. They all eventually moved off into the dark as a group. I wasn't really afraid as I was inside my truck, but my feeling was an uneasy one. So, I got back on the highway and went home. Thanks for watching, and share your stories. Don't forget to consider the idea to maybe think about potentially subscribing. Peace.